Hey, deserving listeners, it's time to watch 90 Day The Single Life. There's a new season this week, so let's watch.
It sucks.
Yeah.
And the hardest is when you have to admit to yourself that she's not the right one.
Yeah.
And that's hard to walk away.
Oh. Hey.
Yeah, I mean, say what you will about his personality and behavior. I think really everyone on the show deserves compassion. They have real feelings. Their behaviors come probably from a place of trauma for them. I've been hypothesizing for Ed what that could be. I don't know, obviously, but I think he has experienced a lot of life, maybe even early childhood experiences, but definitely life that has led him to believe that he's not lovable, that he's not worthy, there's something deeply wrong with him, and he has built up an effective coping defense to that internalization, one of bravado, of charisma. So when we talk about defenses, we are categorizing them into, very coarsely into positive and negative defenses. There are functional defenses and there are dysfunctional defenses. A functional defense to internalizing this message from the outside world that you're unlovable and there's something deeply wrong with you. A functional defense is to be, you know what, I'm going to be charming. I have control over that. I can be charismatic. I can read people well, that kind of thing. And obviously that can be used for good or for evil. And then you can have negative defenses, like I'm going to assume that any problem that exists in my life is not because of me. When we have piles and piles, mountains and mountains of evidence that we've internalized that there's something wrong with us and we have such tremendous shame, and then someone comes at us with an accusation or a criticism, it's too much. There's already a mountain. I can't add even one more hair to that mount. One more straw to the camel's back is a better phrase. I can't do it. I'll break. And so no, I'm not going to let that in. So how? And this is all subconscious. How do I not let that in? Well, I can blame the other person.
Oh my God. Rose was everything that I dreamed she was. But there was so much against Rose and I ever working out. I was so afraid of losing Rose that I, wasn't completely honest.
Why you not tell me the truth? You not want a baby?
What do you mean?
Okay, I'm always looking for evidence that therapy is working, and maybe we just saw that. He said something that I hypothesized, which was, he said, I was so afraid of losing Rose that I wasn't honest with her. He lied to her about a few things, about his height, maybe even his age, but the deal breaker was about him wanting to have kids. He let her believe, and maybe even flat out lied to her, that he was going to have kids with her. That was what she wanted. She wanted to get married and have more kids. And he led her to believe that that was something he wanted to do as well. And then later on in their dating, he says, I didn't want to have kids. I don't know where you got that idea. And she said, and there was already a lot of pain that she had been through. And so it was the last straw, I think. And at the time I thought, and then after she said to him, like, you've been lying to me this whole time. Like, there's something wrong with you. He would deflect and say, no, I never said that. Or, he would double down on the lies or whatever. And I hypothesized at the time that the reason for that was because of a deep insecurity that he was going to lose Rose, and even a deeper insecurity that he was never going to be with anybody. And his, and we all do this, that in an effort to retain relationships with other people, when they come at us with requests for the truth or with accusations, we'll push back, which obviously will alienate the other person and actually cause them to fly away from us. We don't know. Maybe if Ed had been honest with her from the beginning and said, look, you want to have kids. I don't think I want to have kids. I think those days are in my past. Does that mean you don't want to be with me? You know, it's possible earlier on that Rose might have said, well, I mean, that's a bummer, but I do like you. And so, you know, let's see if we can make this work. But by this point, you know, there was so much bad blood between the two of them. She left. He just said that. Let's rewind that because it's a good self-aware statement to say.
You know, I was so afraid of losing Rose that I, you know, wasn't completely honest.
Why you not tell me the truth? You not want a baby?
What do you mean? Well,
I'm done.
And she just decided in the end that I wasn't going to be the one for her.
So I don't know, maybe they edited that up quite a bit, but that wouldn't be the way I would characterize, or I think the way Rose would characterize the reason why she broke up with him. And maybe this is a step toward accepting feedback and criticism from the outside. He's accepted a little bit of that criticism, but I would say that's only 10% of the reason why Rose ultimately was complaining about him. And so maybe he'll learn that, hopefully. Let's see what he says about Liz.
Favorite restaurant in San Diego. I loved her eyes. I loved her hair. I was enthralled.
From what I see, you're very caring.
You're awesome. I loved, you know, being around her. But I was so afraid of being friend zoned that I moved too fast.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay, though that's part of it for sure. It's good that he's able to say that he was so afraid of being friend zoned, and this whole friend zone discourse is, especially from men, I find often to be, you know, foundationed in misogyny. Like men will say, well, this woman is talking to me, I'm entitled to having sex with her or something, and she doesn't want to have sex with me, but she does still like me as a friend. I'm being friend zoned, as if it's some malicious act that women, you know, impose on men. How about she just doesn't want to have sex with you, or she doesn't want to be in a romantic relationship with you? You know, when someone is being friendly with you and you're like, yeah, I mean, as a friend, that's fine, but no, I don't want to be involved with it. You're not friend zoning them. You're just not interested. But somehow it gets into this discourse, because when you hear people use the term friend zone, it's usually on a foundation of entitlement and misogyny and anti-feminism and all sorts of ridiculousness. I don't know how he is using it, but anyway. So he's saying, I was so afraid of being a friend, and her. That's another way to put it. I was so afraid of her rejecting my romantic advances that I moved too fast. And I did a whole deep dive on love bombing, by the way. When we're desperate and so afraid of losing someone, sometimes we will love bomb unconsciously. We will just forge ahead. The other thing sometimes we'll do is, when we have so much desperation for closeness and connection, and we finally find someone that might be that, we just dive all in, and we don't want to go slow. We don't want to wait 3 days for the second date. We want the second date the very next day. We want every day. This is good. I feel good. I don't have anywhere else I can get this from. So I think maybe that's what happened with him. And it doesn't make it okay, of course, and especially the way he did it, because and that's part of the definition of love bombing, is you don't stop to say, do you want that? Do you really want this? Because I don't want to pressure you. You know, he pressured, and because it's one thing to offer, like, hey, would you like to move in? No big deal if you don't, but would you like to? Rather than, hey, I think you should move in. Hey, I think we should start talking about kids. Hey, I love you. Oh my God, you're the best. Oh my God, I can't get enough of you. And it's overwhelming and sort of steamrolling to the person, particularly for people who are susceptible to that, who have similar relational traumas in the past that taught them that they don't deserve to have boundaries. Liz has some red flags of that. I obviously can't know that, though.
Oh,
Too soon. I felt rejected, but she gave me another shot, and thankfully it did get romantic. Can I kiss you?
don't make it weird.
Yeah, and it was clear when you took the whole picture into account that at least part of her liked him, right? During the tell-all, even after they were broken up, she talked about how she still loved him. And, she didn't talk like someone that was just barely in the relationship. The way she talked, she was totally in the relationship. Now, was she ever volitionally moving forward? Now, she talked about how, I think she's been divorced twice, or she'd been in other relationships recently, and she really wanted to move slowly. So maybe that was part of it. But I guess what I'm saying is that he wasn't friend-zoned in the end. She clearly wanted to be with him. I mean, from the evidence. Now, the question is, how is she doing personality-wise and relational trauma-wise to really know who she is and what she wants, to really know how to detect whether you're in a relationship that is safe for you, whether you're in a relationship that is fair to you. There's some red flags that maybe she has some issues with that. She's still developing in that way. But I don't know. The biggest piece of evidence, I think, is when we heard the phone call, the infamous phone call between the two of them. And I think she was still with him after that point. Whereas a lot of people would be like, no, I don't want to be with someone who treats me that way. Having said all that, all of us can be susceptible to that kind of abuse and Stockholm syndrome and being brainwashed and literally gaslit in situations like that when it's ongoing. Any one of us, if we get stuck in an abusive relationship, can find ourselves staying in a relationship well after the expiration date. And then later, after we leave, hopefully, we look back and say, I should have left a long time earlier. Any one of us can be there are personality types that are more susceptible to that, but anyone beaten down will exhibit that safety, survival instinct of just lay low. I'll just stay in the relationship and I'll just try to appease them and everything will be fine.
One of the most amazing nights of my life. I never given a woman multiple orgasms in my life. And yeah, I did that.
All right, so sex positivity, nothing wrong with talking about sex, nothing wrong with taking some pride in your ability to, have someone else have a good time. But did she consent to that disclosure? It's not illegal or unethical, but it is perhaps unfair and uncool to talk about that on international television without Liz's consent to that. But who knows? Maybe she's pretty open about that too. We have this paradigm where it's just like, well, when a guy talks about sex, it's invasive and humiliating to the woman, where when it's not always the case. I mean, there are plenty of women that are just like, I don't care if he talks about what we did in bed. It's, sex is sex. We had sex. Yeah, and that happened. Big deal, Everyone does it, right? Or most people do it, right? So I don't know what's happening in this scene. There's also nothing wrong with someone taking pride, as I said, but it is a little yellow flag for a grandiose self-presentation of, I want to brag, I want to boast, I want people to think, I'm trying to manage my image, I'm trying to have people think a certain thing about me, and I'm going to potentially questionably exploit someone's privacy in the effort of that. There's a few yellow flags along those lines that we've been seeing, and I just thought I'd point that out.
And we went into hyper mode. We went from 0 to 100. I asked Liz to move in with me, and I bought a ring, and I was going to ask her to marry me. But it never happened because we both brought baggage. I was very insecure about me, about being loved again.
Okay, good. So another, I think, accurate self-awareness thing there, that he's saying, I was so insecure about whether or not anyone would love me. I think that is and has been his primary schema that trips him up, is this assumption that people won't love him. And he has a lot of defenses against that. Like I've been talking about, blaming other people, grandiosity, not focusing on the self. Like really, you know, part of love bombing is really focusing on the other person and never thinking, is this what I want? You know, is this, because for people that don't love bomb, so for people who love bomb, not always, but a component is a lack of connection with the self. Because if you're in connection with the self, you're like, because most people, they want mutual love, right? And love bombing tends to be very one directional. And it's out of desperation. It can be done in a very charming way, but it's often done in desperation. Whereas in a healthy personality and relationship, you're occasionally thinking about, am I being pursued at this point? You know, I'm pursuing. Are they pursuing me? Because I want someone to want me. I don't want someone just to accept my wanting of them. But when you're desperate, you'll take anything, and you will accept the fact that, well, at least they're compliant with my love bombing. You know, at least that's something. Because if I just let this happen naturally, she'll just fly away, and like all the other people that reject me. But anyway, so he's talking about the problem with me and Liz was insecurity, and yeah, I think that is the topic sentence. There's a lot of detail there and potential abuse that we witnessed in the infamous phone call. But that's where it stems from. Abuse often stems from insecurity, attachment insecurity. It doesn't justify the abuse, but it does give us a treatment direction when we're trying to reduce abusive behavior.
In all, we broke up about 8 times. And the last time, it was for good.
So where have we heard that before? I broke up with her 8 times. We've heard that from Corey and Evelyn. I don't know if I've actually published those episodes up until recently. But anyway, for him, he's saying we broke up 8 times. I'm guessing he was the one who broke up with her majority, if not every single time. I think he might have even said that. And we heard the infamous phone call. We could imagine them having a lot of conversations like that, where he would get triggered, his insecurities, and his solution to that is to abuse and control and put down. And then he would actually break up with her, but then they get back. So it's a similar syndrome. You could make an argument that Ed and Evelyn have a very similar set of schemas.
You healed me. Teddy, look at your new daddy. I'm going through a complete healing process right now. I've lost 25 pounds. I'm learning a lot about myself, and I'm in therapy. In a way, I still love Liz, and I'm just trying to get through it.
So I'm glad he's still in therapy. We don't know, but there seems to be some evidence of it's working. And maybe this season will, like with Colt, we might see an evolution of his personality. I don't know. I'll also say that therapy isn't a guarantee that you're getting any better. You know, you have to have a good match with a therapist. The therapist has to be oriented in the direction that you kind of need them to be. You have to work in therapy. But I don't know, there seems to be some signs that it might be working. Let's hope. All right, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.